You don't need a million different offers. You need to be able to express one idea a million different ways. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever in the world you might be. I am Nicole BC, and you know everything. I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say how excited I am for this one. What I will say is I am excited. We are in the final stretch, and these three were not a part of the original programming. These are all, I was going to say listener, you informed, my people, let me know who needed to be in this series. Suggested does not capture the urgency within which these next three were insisted upon. And in fact, the last one was an actual argument. And here's why. I'm not presenting these as an expert on any of these artists in this series. I come to you as a fellow entrepreneur standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity, looking for unique ways to approach what is ultimately a completely blank slate when it comes to 21st century business building. We know everything that's come before ain't working no mo. And I thought it would be fun, not just for summer, because that's what this is all about. We always do a little side quest during summer here. But you know everything. These artists leaned into that. They relied upon their intuition, their wisdom, and their willingness to fuck it up and find out. And all of these artists were generally pretty dang young. So they wouldn't have had any of the success that you know and love them for. They wouldn't have had any of the support, financial, network, any kind of resources to get started. And yet they did it anyway. And despite wherever you may find yourself in terms of your own life experience, career experience, professional experience, wisdom, gained knowledge, you absolutely have permission to do it your way. That's what this entire fucking podcast is about, let alone this particular series. So again, I'm not an expert on any one of these artists. I hope that by listening to some of the highlights and potentially deep cuts of their stories, you can apply it to what it is you're creating and what you're building. These last three are artists I'm probably more familiar with than a handful of the artists we've shared and discussed and commiserated upon in this series. I date myself kind of like I have with all of these as well. And it's just a different world now. Like celebrity, that paradigm of celebrity, I don't think exists in the same place where you can have a million fans and someone might not even know your name. If you're listening to this, you definitely know this artist's name, but you might not know them as a producer or as an urban artist. You might think of them more as a fashion designer. You might think of them more as a animated character. This artist wasn't just happy. He was one of the heaviest hitters in multiple art genres and in sort of being pulled vertically through many different creative industries. He leaned into ownership, which you've noticed has been a thread, right? He is wildly influential when it comes to culture and creativity. He gets it when it comes to intellectual property, royalties, architecture, legacy. Like this artist never just thought about a song. He thought about the million of artistic and creative and commercial components that go with any creative piece of work. This is a man who went from kind of a nowhere, nothing nerd to literally engineering the sound of the 2000s. He reshaped fashion, design, brand identity, and creative components from the inside out. From the Neptunes to NERD to Billionaire Boys Club to Louis Vuitton. You know who I'm talking about now. He did it without ever shouting for attention. And I reckon he's one of the most quiet spoken leaders I've certainly ever heard. So in this episode, we're asking, what would Pharrell do? if he were building your business? So let's decode the smoothest disruptor in this particular game. Pharrell Lanskillo? Apologies. Pharrell Williams was born in 1973 in Virginia Beach, Virginia, the oldest of 3 sons in a working class family. His mom was a school teacher. His dad repaired boilers. Yo, I have a boiler. That's actually a pretty lucrative job. He played in marching band, loved Star Trek, and met fellow bandmate Chad Hugo at summer camp for gifted musicians, aka band camp. They connected instantly. By high school, Pharrell and Chad had a little production crew. They entered a local talent show where they were spotted by Teddy Riley, the legendary R&B producer who just so happened to live down the road. That was the first domino. Teddy Riley brought them into his studio and mentored them. Pharrell ended up ghostwriting Rump Shaker for Rex in Effect. If you don't know, now you do. And he was 18 years old when he ghost wrote that song. And yeah, the line, all I want to do is a zoom, 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 was definitely a Pharrell bar. That was the first door. From there, they landed production work for Blackstreet, then Mace, then Jay-Z. And by the end of the 2000s, the Neptunes were behind 43% of all US radio airplay hits. This included Britney Spears' I'm a Slave for You. I was almost saying it. You're welcome. Kellis' Milkshake and Nelly's Hot in Her. I mean, should I include those in the playlist? I think I just might. They were dominating rap, R&B, pop, and even funk revival, quietly shaping the sonic architecture of the charts without ever needing the spotlight. I'm not a frontman by design. I'm a thinker by nature, Pharrell was quoted in GQ as saying. Pharrell never just thought about his art as a product. He looked at it as this multifaceted opportunity. He didn't barge into business. He slid in through a side door, ghostwriting, playing drums, demoing beats. He built trust by delivering excellence before asking for anything. He learned how to do all of the bits and pieces. I talk a lot about this with business owners and entrepreneurs and artists because oftentimes we kind of resent the fact that we have to like DIY and wear all of the different hats. But the reality is when you are willing to play every part in the band, then you know how it works in a way that doesn't just allow you to be a DIYer, but in a way that allows you to manage and then lead each of those parts. Pharrell approached everything like a humble student. He was willing to not just learn, but master his craft. And you might be noticing that through thread getting pulled through all of these different entrepreneurs and creatives as well. You don't need 1 million followers or $1 million. You need one strategic collaborator who sees your talent before the market does. Show up where your people play. Show up where your industry lives. And these might not be VIP red velvet rope parties, right? These are quiet rooms. These are studios. These are creative gatherings. These are places, now they exist in Discord, or I just shared a link on The Loop for a place where you can start to share your creative work for the pure sake of getting feedback. Finding your creative teammates, and this is something I also noticed very, very early on in my career, and this is 100% my bias, but the most successful players tend to always move with the same team. And this doesn't just happen in the arts industries. You see this in any place where humans are networked and working together. When you find people that you work well with, who get you, who you're able to like riff with and create these new ideas, you take them with you. The rising tide raises all ships. And it's not just about success. It's actually about finding people that challenge you, that you feel safe enough to look like an idiot with, to have a bad idea before it gets built into like the next big thing, as I like to call it. Have you noticed how many of these different artists started at a talent show Do you know how many creatives I know in my life and career who've turned their noses up at these types of contests, whether it's submitting your art for a particular show or submitting your writing for a publication? I think it's a fear of failure and judgment and this inherent competition that a lot of us suffer from that keeps us from participating in spaces like that. That's where your people are. You don't have to stay there. But when you find others who are actually just willing to put themselves out there, even if it's really bad, when you find someone like that who you can also work well with, that's special. No one wants to do a talent show. No one wants to do social media. Shit, they don't even want to have a newsletter or podcast. See what I did there? If you want your art to be taken seriously, if you're willing to take your dreams so seriously, you make them reality, AKA my definition of business, something has to give. Why not you? You are right. Spec work and cold pitches are everywhere. But let's rewrite this to reflect some next level creative strategy. Lean into the unexpected, disruptive. And now you're tapping into Pharrell's subversive genius. So let's say you are an emerging creative. Maybe you're stepping out into your freelance career. Everybody's pitching, everybody's mood boarding, everybody's putting a portfolio together, but you want to do what Pharrell did. Enter through the side door. So you're a designer, editor, writer, sound artist, and you're breaking into a saturated industry. Instead of pitching polished work to the front office, build something so strangely specific it forces people to notice. Find a forgotten archive or an overlooked brand moment from your dream client's past, maybe an old campaign, a slogan, a discontinued product, a blog post from 2012, who knows? Remix it into something wildly and weirdly brilliant, something that demos your creative eye, but features their creative idea. Make it a 15-second sound loop, a glitchy mini film, animated zine drop. I mean, really play with it. Post it anonymously, tag no one, let the vibe resonate. Then a week or two later, DM not the creative head, but maybe their assistant. That was always my favorite side door. The person who was literally opening the door, the person who is, I don't know, do we answer phones anymore? I used to talk and sweet talk the person who was answering the phones. But that gatekeeper that's sitting at the desk that won't let you go through, that's who you make your best friend. When you start to make the people who support your mentor, your idol, when you make their support look good, it's a brilliant side door. My love letter to your early work. That's the challenge here, right? Can you create something that is so undeniably you, yet connects you to the work you want to be participating with? That's how you design your future. So this isn't about outreach or cold pitching. This is like underground branding, right? You're creating context before you make contact, just like Pharrell. He was already inside the music before he ever asked for a credit. That gets you remembered, not because you're following the rules, but because you made your own signal in a sea of noise. So the multiverse of Pharrell really starts to develop here. He didn't just make beats. He built blueprints. He understood early on that a song, a shoe, a smell, a shirt, a sound, these are all expressions of the same creative source code. And whoever owns that code owns the game. Music was my gateway drug, but I'm not just trying to do albums. I'm trying to make worlds. Pharrell told Time magazine. So here are a couple examples to play this one through. Pharrell and Chad didn't just produce for others. They retained co-production and songwriting credits, stacking publishing royalties across decades. They then turned this brilliance into the Billionaire Boys Club. God, you say that one fast, right? And Ice Cream, if you know, you know. Pharrell partnered with Nico of Bape to create a streetwear line that predated the influencer fashion economy. For all you sneakerheads out there, you know what I'm talking about. And Daniel, I'm going to give you full credit for me even having any idea what this particular piece of history was about. But this is when we first saw music partnering with clothing, partnering with like urban culture. Okay, it wasn't first. I'd take that back. But like we were sort of also transcending like the concept of urban. So these were Japanese companies. These were English streetwear influencers. Like we were starting to take the urban out of like American cities, recognizing that the absolute OGs in this game from the 80s and the 90s had allowed a lot of different cultures and a lot of different people to start really leaning into what is their urban culture. And that's where Pharrell saw genius. It's like, how can we break down borders and bring these creative partnerships together into these physical products so that everybody can feel a piece of this ownership? Human Race was a skincare line rooted in storytelling, sustainability, and IP ownership, not just white label formulas, and another piece of brilliance that Pharrell had dreamed up. He even composed the Despicable Me soundtrack, Writing Happy, and secured licensing deals that made the song itself a product. So you can see how he really starts to think it's like a spider web to me, right? Like he is world building, but what he's doing is he's taking these different countries, these different nation states, these different cultures, and he's webbing them together. He never sold out. He licensed across lanes. He was building universes when most artists were begging for a sponsorship. You don't need a million different offers. You need to be able to express one idea a million different ways. He never siloed his talent. He never considered himself a producer or a drum player or a beats maker or a songwriter. Did I already say that? He translated his talents across all genres and industries. So back to your own creative entrepreneurship, right? You're a freelancer. You've already started to build some connections based on some of your brilliant business building strategies. Now, let's look into the future, right? Let's say you've got a handful of different ideas and you're really wanting them to start creating some impact, not just influence, but some real aha moments for the people that are being able to experience them. So look at next year, right? Look at what ideas make sense in what order, let's say over the next 4 quarters. Look at what's working now and how can you fracture that into new formats? And then you think about it as these quarterly drops. So let's say you run like a small agency, AKA you're a freelancer, positioning yourself as an agency, utilizing AI and offering yourself up as someone who has a variety of different expertise and outputs that you can support your clients with. And let's just say you nailed a killer rebrand based on taking something from the past, remixing it, and displaying your brilliance. What would Pharrell do? He would turn the portfolio or the mood board, or let's say that Remax, into a public-facing style guide. He would release that in the spring, right? Just before all of the different fashion shows. He would then release a limited run product with their brand colors as a palette drop. Again, you can do all of this digitally. Are you producing the products? Maybe, but are you displaying the products and photographing, air quotes, photographing them as if these products are being utilized by some of the more influential people in your space? 100%. Maybe you're hosting a live or a casual conversation or a panel with some of these potential clients and or interviewers, some of these potential clients and or influencers, and walking them through your creative process. So it's like you are an interviewer talking to your exact clients about the things that you've created and how you're creating this annual launch plan that features their rebrand. Then you create some merchandise pulling from everything we've just discussed. That's what Pharrell would do. You don't just create deliverables on timelines, you develop an entire mythology. Pharrell didn't just build worlds with songs. He got success from systems that looped his genius through fashion, fragrance, footwear, film, you name it. You create it, you dream it, you build it, right? We just talked about timelines, right? Like pulling this creative thread through, let's say for a year with these different drop points. But the thing about Pharrell is he recognized that time is a construct. Trends are not timeless. He didn't just ride these waves, he engineered tides. While others chased the heat of summer or the cool of winter, he built this resonance signal. And it wasn't a viral, time-based, opportunistic trend. It was a visceral experience. Like you can feel something Pharrell's made without ever knowing or seeing his name on it. The difference between trend and legacy is intention. I'm not here for the moment. I'm here for the movement. Again, Pharrell being quoted by GQ. So here are a couple more examples to tease this one out. Frontin', released in 2003, felt like a summer flex, but it was really the launch of his solo identity. It was seeded with the Neptune's DNA, but it was previewing in my mind the 2006 release and everything else he was about to do over the next decade. Happy, released in 2013, was a 4-minute joy spell from the Despicable Me 2 soundtrack. It became the first Billboard Hot 100 #1 song from a film since Titanic. Shout out Celine. Pharrell released the 24 hours of Happy video, looping joy, unskippable energy, and an experience too long to go viral, but too pure joy to ignore. Do you see how he keeps like creating new universes within his metaverse? The pièce de résistance. In 2022, Pharrell created Cash In, Cash Out with Tyler, the Creator, and 21 Savage. This was an animated music video stylized in looping CGI. It didn't just trend, it looped on TikTok, earned animation awards, and blended visual art, music, and futurist nostalgia. He wasn't chasing TikTok, he was teaching it. I mean, the waves from that particular tide were reverberated throughout Talkverse for show. The entrepreneurial takeaway here, what lasts isn't what pops, it's what loops. Legacy is built on repeat value, things people return to, not things they forget after one swipe. This is like compounding interest, my friends. So back to your entrepreneurial creative endeavors, my friend. Let's step away at the content you're creating and look at your catalog. What have you already made that still hits? What's aged well? What's timeless? What would Pharrell do? He would loop it. He would create a modular version that lives as a carousel, reef, PDF, deck, email, onboarding asset. He would make it evergreen, auto dripping, and unskippable. Oh my God, I'm thinking of one of those original memes. It wasn't even a meme. It was like a virus. Oh my God. You know if you know, you know. Please reply or comment or even like link it. It was that thing, like this was like fucking 20 years ago, and you'd click on the link and then the song would just play over and it would just like take over your entire computer screen. It was like kind of hilarious, but also maddening. Anywho, what would Pharrell do? He would loop it. Surprise it. Easter egg it. Surreal it. Make one just unbelievable moment. Pharrell always includes something off. A sound too sharp, a lyric too weird, a rhythm too playful, something that really surprises you, something that stops you in your tracks because it feels surreal. It makes his work addictive. Like you can watch it over and over and over again because you're just trying to catch that one moment. Lastly, he would host it. Don't let your legacy live on someone else's feed. Create a microsite or an archive. Give your best IP its home that you own. Turn your blog into your vault. A TikTok series into your visual deck. Make the content feel like it matters and it's yours. Timeless work doesn't just inspire, it returns. So what would Pharrell do? He wouldn't pitch. He wouldn't people please. He wouldn't chase trends. He would build something so good, it feels familiar, like it already exists, like you knew that you were going to love it. And then he would let you know, he just invented that. So how can you apply that to you now, today? We walked through like a pretty interesting example, but hopefully these are 3 tactical steps you can take to walk Pharrell's steps into tomorrow. Lead with synesthesia. You familiar with that term? So this isn't about Pharrell so much as the way he sees the world. It's where your different sensories elicit an unexpected connection. So you hear something and see color, or you see something and smell freshly baked bread. It's technically a condition that some people have that connects the wrong, air quotes, sensory output to input. But I think this could be a really interesting challenge for you. What if you stopped separating sound, sight, sensation, and started creating synesthesia between them? So you take your current offering, whether that's a program or a piece of art, a product, a concept, and you reimagine it as this full sensory experience. So what does it look like? What does it feel like? How does it move? What does it smell like? Does it have a taste? And then maybe there's a playlist or a scent. Perhaps there's a video, a short film component, a hoodie. You don't just brand your art, you translate it across the senses. So like Pharrell's Human Race skincare brand, it's infused with storytelling, scent, minimalist packaging, which is memorable and futuristic. He tied his belief in everyday rituals to high design. So make it full sensory, full spectrum sensory experience. Secondly, create the infrastructure, not just the offers. This isn't about collaboration. This is about platforms, and not as a singular space, but as stepping stones. Instead of going, well, what should I launch and when? Ask, what can I create that I can keep layering upon, that I can keep building on? When you think about licensing, step into co-creation. Then think about partnerships, affiliates, open source models, structures that scale, things that don't just allow you to put something out, but that enable you to work with others who can then leverage those relationships and then build and utilize what you've all created together to develop something completely new. Let me land this in like a more tangible example because that's fairly amorphous. Pharrell's Yellow, his digital auction house, Something in the Water Festival, these were creative schools. They were all built at once, but they fueled different ecosystems. So he saw these different layers almost like a Lego, like a Lego creation, right? And it's like each one of the pieces are their own thing, but together they create something completely new and different. And none of them would be able to, like that final creation couldn't exist without each of the individual pieces. It's a different way of thinking of both creation and collaboration because nothing exists without the other. And we're leaning into this emergent, decentralized way of partnership where we're going to make something, but we don't know what that thing is. And we're going to work together, but we don't know what roles each of us are going to play. We have to just come together and see what happens. That's why finding these different team players is so crucial because you know when you start working with some people, it's going to be magic. And it makes that process so much more expansive and catalytic. Okay, lastly, I'm getting ready to land the plane here, y'all. You know that one part of you doesn't fit a niche or a brand or an audience or an industry. So let's normalize that. Rather than niching down, let's just recognize, like any creative, you are multifaceted. Your unique combination of elements is your power source. Lean into that. Make one piece of content that doesn't make sense today and send it, or this week, whatever. You pick a deadline. But do something that just isn't quote unquote you, because it's too off brand, or it's not within your niche, or it's not for your audience, or it's a little too poetic or a little too cinematic. Maybe it's too sci-fi. I don't know. It's that thing that you feel like you can't do because it doesn't fit. That. Do that. The people who get it, who like it, who comment on it, who notice it, those are your people. So like Pharrell's falsetto on frontin', his appreciated drop-in for Gust of Wind, the animated avatars and cash in, cash out. Every time he went full-blown alien, he literally made a classic. Maybe that's what happens when you let your freak flag fly. You already have all of the tools. You don't need anything else. But maybe you could use your hammer like a paintbrush, or maybe you could use your paintbrush like a drumstick. Use your tools. Use what you have to reshape your world. Maybe try just fucking with what you already got in terms of offerings or products or mediums. Take 3 different things that you already have created and remix them, repackage them. Maybe you repurpose it for your dream client, or maybe it's a submission as part of your portfolio. Make it for your future self. I think another big takeaway from Pharrell is your glow doesn't need a spotlight. Like, you shine, my friend. Trust that. Trust your light. Trust your resonance. What would happen if you just gave something away? Something that you've been sitting on for a minute. You didn't know if it was good enough. You didn't know if it was ready. You didn't know if anybody would like it. What if you just like put it out there? You don't have to list it. You can. Maybe it's a link at the bottom. Maybe you just text it to a friend or a mentor. What if you didn't have any attachment to what happens after it? You just put it out into the world and see what happens. See who shows up. See what feedback you get. And lastly, in order to break all of the rules, you don't need a permission slip. I feel like, and I hope, and my intention is that each one of these artists we've discussed in this series feels like your permission slip. And also, fuck that. You get to do whatever you want. And a really beautiful creative challenge is always like, what if I just did it the complete opposite way? What if I broke my own rules? I've been in that experiment, deep in that experiment for like a year now. You don't need to wait for permission, and you don't need to wait for somebody else to break the rules. You are the disruption. You are the disturbance in the force, my friend. So kill something off, just for funsies. Kill off a service, a product, some content, maybe shut down a whole channel. Identify one outdated part of your brand or your offer, your business, or your system and structure for creating, and kill it. And then let people know something big is coming in, because it is, because that's how this shit works. Okay, we're there. Pharrell is a living example of what happens when you stop chasing influence and you start channeling frequency. He's not successful because he was everywhere. He's successful because he made everywhere sound, smell, feel, look like him. He got weird, which created genius. He was generous, which allowed him to be deliberate. Your creativity doesn't need to be a hustle. It's simply the instrument you like to play. So if you tune it right, we won't just be playing your song, my friend. We'll be collecting your shoes. We'll be watching your movies. We will be copying your style. That's what Pharrell would do. So I hope you enjoyed that. That one was fun. That one was a lot more fun even than I expected. I got 2 more coming at you. So see you soon.